Welcome back. In this video, we're going to start exploring Postgres. This is going to be a long video, but lucky for you, since it is a video, you can pause it anytime you need a break. I'm not going to be pausing, I'm going straight through. What we're going to do is three things. One is really short, and that is set up Node to just connect to Postgres. Two, we're going to look at some tools for Postgres and show how to create some tables, do some sample SQL. We'll talk a little bit about relational databases. And then third, we're going to then take that knowledge and then move it into our Node app. And so this is going to take a while. Let's get started. So here's our app. Everything's checked in from the previous video. All that code is here up on GitHub. There's a link to that in the series description. Go check it out. And so we have the same app. It's still kind of ugly, but let's hook it up to Postgres and see what we can do. Let's start with the terminal. First, I have to find my terminal. There it is. Starting with the terminal, I've got my SCSS running. We won't be doing anything with that in this video. Let's install what we need for Postgres. So npm install pg-save. And so this right here will install the package we're using today. Now what is this? Well, if we take a look at our browser here, I'm going to show you a few things. First is this. So this is the website for Node Postgres, and this is that package we just installed. Now, funny timing is this big red thing here at the top. That's not normally there, but they just noticed a vulnerability and fixed it. So, hey, fixing vulnerabilities is good. So look at this as a positive, not a negative. Anyway, this is the website for the package that we're using. We're going to come back to this in various videos as we're doing Postgres things. You'll find this useful, node-postgres.com. You can find this same package on npm. You can install it just by doing npm install pg, just like we did. So that's installed. Now let's do one other thing. So we've installed the package. If we look at our code, we can see our package JSON has changed. It's because of that line right there. The next thing we need to do is put in some environment variables for Postgres. These are the things we're going to need. We're going to specify host, which is our current computer, that's localhost. We're going to specify a database name, and so this can be anything. I'm going to call it book list. We don't need a password when we're running locally, and the port by default, Postgres runs on 5432. I totally recommend for you that you leave it there. I, however, am going to change it, which is one of the nice things about these environment files. I already have an old version of Postgres running on that port, and so I'm going to have a new version of Postgres running on this port. But put yours at 5432, unless you also happen to have an old version of Postgres running. So 5433, there's that. We're actually done in terms of the basic configuration of the app for Postgres. Let's talk about Postgres itself. And so I'd recommend two things. One is the Postgresapp. So I'm going to run it. It looks like this right here. Whenever you install this and do server settings, you'll see your port is 5432. Once again, changing mine to 5433, and I'm hitting initialize, and this should start the server. There we go. Now, where did I get this fancy app? If you go to PostgreSapp.com, you can download this. It's nice, it's free, and it allows you to run Postgres as an app on your computer, which means when you're done with this, you can turn it off and even delete it, and Postgres is gone. It's kind of handy. So this is my first recommended tool for getting Postgres running. Now with all databases, at least everyone that I've seen, there is the database and then there are tools on top of the database, and they're not the same thing. And so that's the case here. Postgresapp, this is just the database. It stores data. You can get data out of it. That's why it's there. That's what databases do. Tools are separate. pgAdmin.org. This is another free tool. Go here, go to the left-hand side and hit download, there are nefarious looking download buttons that sometimes appear in this ad block on the right. Don't click on those. Click on the download over here. Click whatever operating system you have, click the download, and get pgAdmin running. So I've got my server running. Let me go ahead and get pgAdmin 4 running. And here it is. If I open this up, I've got this old version of Postgres. You can ignore that. I am going to create a new server, and I'm going to call it localhost. Now, see this red arrow? What that red arrow is actually not about this. It's actually about this right here. Localhost. And then you should be done. Now, like I said earlier, I've got another version running, so I'm changing that to 5433. You shouldn't have to do that. Now I have it running right here. So here's my tool for interacting with Postgres. This is my actual server app running. From now on, I'm not going to be dealing with this. I'm only going to be dealing with this right here. And so we've now connected to the server through pgAdmin. I can look at my databases. I created this database by default. I want to create a new one, and I named it book list. So let's go create database book list. But when I say I named it book list, what I'm referring to is this right here, pgDatabase book list. This has to match this. If they don't match, it doesn't work. All right. So that is the database. So pgDatabase equals whatever you have your database named here. Hit save. Now we're connected. So that is super important. Localhost is this computer. I'm connected to that server on this computer at this port. I don't need a password. Book list for the database. I think we're now probably done with this file. And that file. Okay, so Postgres is what is called a relational database. Relational databases, I like to liken them to spreadsheets. Imagine something like Excel. You've got a screen with rows and columns, and you put new rows in as you put new data in. So let's say you have a list of books. In your spreadsheet, you might have multiple rows, one row per book, and then columns across the top to say the title of the book and whatnot. We're actually going to replicate that same thing here in Postgres. And so here in pgAdmin, I'm going to look at schemas. And inside schemas, I'm going to see public. I'm going to look in there, and then down here, I'm going to find this thing called tables. If I right-click on tables, or Mac two-finger click, I can create a table like so. Now it automatically starts me off with an error. It's okay, because that was just to tell me I need a table name. So books. Now it's cool. So I've created I'm defining, I haven't created it yet. I'm defining a table called books. Sometimes these are pluralized, sometimes these are singular. I think you'll find them more often than not pluralized, so I'll just do that here. So here we go, books. We don't need to change anything else here. Now every table needs columns. And so this is what's in our spreadsheet. We've created the spreadsheet, that's what we just did with giving it a table name. That's logically we're creating a spreadsheet. So now let's create columns. And so the columns define all the different types of data that we can have in our table. And so over here on the right, there's this plus button. And let's see, the column name cannot be empty. Okay, cool. I'm going to create, this is for books, so I'm going to create book ID. So book ID is going to be the name of this column. Now in terms of data types, there's all sorts of data types. What are we going to do? Well, what we actually want to use is serial. Serial is a good one to use for a primary key. Every time we insert a record into this table, we're actually going to let the database determine what the ID is in it. So the first one will probably be ID 1, the second one ID 2, the third book ID 3, and so on. And so we're going to use serial. And now let's look at these columns. Let's talk about primary key. I just mentioned that word. Primary key, think of this as the primary column or primary value for identifying the record. That's a good place to start with the idea of a primary key. That's not sufficient. It's not everything that primary keys are about, but it's a good way of at least starting with primary keys. And so I'm going to identify all of these with a particular ID. And so I'm going to mark this as yes. And in this table, this will be our only primary key. Do I want it as not null? Yes. Null means no value. And I want to require every record here, because it is the primary key. This is the one, the key that identifies each row. I want to make sure it's not null, it's serial, and it's marked as primary key. I need some other columns. I need a title. And this could be all sorts of different types of data types. I'm going to choose character varying. What this means is character varying is we can just put in a bunch of text and it can be variable length. Whenever I do this, I need to set a value in here. So I want to leave plenty of room in here, so I'll give it 150. Meaning the 150 characters in the title are possible. I want to make sure every book has a title, and so I'm going to say it is not null. But this is not my primary key, so I'm going to leave that as is. Now, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to put the authors in a text field as well. I could go a different way with this from a relational database perspective. Just for simplicity's sake, for this application and for this video series, I'm just going to create another text field. Later on, we will create another table for tags and link the tags in this together. But for simplicity's sake, let's just do this. Authors, character varying, once again, also 150. Do I have to have an author? There are books that are anonymous, and so I actually don't have to have an author, so I'll leave that as it is. And then I want to create one more column for notes. Actually, I'm not going to do that. We'll just leave this as is. Delete that. There we go. So here's our table definition. Book ID with a serial value, and this will be basically a number that'll count up from 1 to whatever. And then title and authors, both of those are character fields. I'm going to hit save, and that will create our books table. Okay. Now that we have our books table, we need to use it in some way. So I'm going to two-finger click on this and go to the query tool. And given my small screen, I have to do that arrow thing to fit this on. So let's give me a little bit more room here. Here is a look at SQL. SQL is another programming language altogether, entirely different from JavaScript. It's a special purpose language, though. JavaScript is a general purpose language. SQL is a special purpose language. It is meant for dealing with sets of data. That's why this language exists. So here's just a little piece of it. So I'm going to get everything or select everything from books. There we go. I've gotten everything from books. So we see our spreadsheet. We see book ID, that's one column, title, another column, and authors, another column. But we don't see any rows. Well, the reason why we don't see any rows is we haven't put any data in. So let's do that. Well, I'll show you the SQL for that. Let's comment out this line in comments. You can do it that way. So I'm going to show you how to insert a record. So I'm going to say insert into books. And I need to insert just some book. Oh, I've already made a mistake. No parentheses around that. Insert into books. And so I'm going to have to come up with some book to insert. I have to insert title and have to insert authors. And then I'm going to specify the values I'm going to put in. So I need to put some title Let's just make up a book, and I'm going to call this the book of cool code. And the author is going to be Eric Stowell. So let's run this. Now we can see the query returned successfully in 63 milliseconds. That's cool. Let's see, insert 01. This right here means that I inserted a single record. So I'm going to comment this out and then uncomment this and run it. Now we see our spreadsheet. We see a row, book ID with title and authors. Now notice when I did my insert, I didn't insert into book ID. It was on purpose. I want the table to create that ID for me whenever I insert the record. So there's that. Let's insert another book. Book of cool code, and then I'm going to create a book of horrible code. I would never write that book, or at least never purposely. So here we go. This is going to be in by Enrique Sowell. So let's run it. Select. Now, the Book of Horrible Code by Enrique is book ID 2. Book ID 1 is Eric Sowell. So now here's our primary key. This is the identifying ID over here on the left-hand side. Then title and authors. And here's some examples of selecting and inserting. What we're going to do now is we're going to go and create a form for a book, and we're going to insert a new book in here. So that's our next task. So that means we need to jump over to our node code. And now we're there. So I've already created a route for book form. And book form at this point is very boring. All it has is that H1. So let's extend this and turn this into a real form and post some data back and get all this working and attempt to connect to that server and insert the data. Start with a form. I'm going to post this, and in terms of action, I'm going to go to, I'm actually going to change my URL. Book form was temporary. I'm going to change this to /book/add. I like that better. So this is going to be /book/add. All right. So I'll keep book form at that name, the mustache file. So book/book/add should go here, and then book form here. And so let's go ahead and do this form. Okay, we now have a form. We have our two fields that we need. Remember, we don't need a field for ID because that is going to be supplied by Postgres itself, which is nice. And we're going to be posting back to book/add. Now I've changed the server to book/add, and let's go take a look here. This is going to be our running server. So let's see if we go find our terminal, which is running somewhere. Here it is. npm start. Now, since I've changed the route, if I were to go to book form, that's no longer going to work. I changed it to book/add, and there it is right there. So here's our form that we have just created. Let's go back to the server and create a post route. Let's start by redirecting back to the list. So we will render the form, we will fill out the form, we'll then post the data back here, save it into Postgres, and when we're done, we'll redirect people back to the list so that they can see their newly added book added to the list. So that seems like a decent flow. And so let's see what we're going to get back from the post body. So I'm going to console log it here, and if you've done much Express before, you might notice that if I were to go try this right now, you might go, hey, you're going to have a problem here. So new title is shorts rate. I would totally write a book about how shorts are great. So we hit save and cannot post to book add. Well, I have done something terrible, and I made a mistake a few minutes ago, and now I just noticed it. This one was not on purpose. I was supposed to put book add right there. That's what I meant to do, but I didn't. So let's go back. Shorts are great, still true. Eric Sowell, author, save, and I've redirected back to our book list. So if we go find our terminal, we will see our post body is undefined. Oh snap, what do we do? Well, by default, post bodies aren't going to be parsed by Express. We won't be able to have access to them. So we need to install something called body parser. There we go. Let's rerun this. All right, here we need to bring in body parser. Let's do body parser. And now we need to tell Express to use it. So this is a middleware, Express middleware, and so we need to use the use. And so we will say, let's see, body parser URL encoded false. Why don't you go take a look? If you're interested in what extended means, go take a look at that in their documentation. So this includes body parser in the server. Now, if we go to book/add, if we go to shorts are great, and post, and we look in our terminal, now we can actually get the post body. Excellent. Which means we can now take that data and we can save it to Postgres. So how in the world do we do that? Well, we've already installed the Postgres stuff, so we can go ahead and use it. So here in the post body, what we need to do is essentially do this. We need to connect to the database, then we need to run our query, and when we're done running our query, we're going to redirect to list. That's our sequence. And we have multiple pieces there because whenever you're dealing with databases, databases are things that run outside of the website itself, which means the website can't just access it directly. What it first needs to do is connect to the database, wherever it is on the network. In this case, the network is just my own machine, but still, it has to connect to something else. So that's why there's a separate connect step. Then once you've connected, you run your query, and then when that's done, we will redirect. So let's use that PG that we had before, that we installed before. All right. Now, normally this is what we would do. What we actually want is we want something called client out of PG. All right, this is one way to do that. Or if we want to use some of the newer features of JavaScript, which are totally available here, we can do this. Use destructuring, and this will give us the client. So let's see. Now that we've created client, let's create an instance of client. Now that we've got that, we can connect. Now when we connect, what it's going to do is it's going to use the environment settings that we have. If they're all correct, and I'm hoping they are, if it's all correct, it will connect to the database and everything will be good. So we can say client.connect like so. And that connects. Now, because we're talking to a networked resource, this is an asynchronous call. That means that we need to deal with the asynchronicity in some way. There's the old school way with JavaScript where you pass in callbacks. We're not going to do that. There's async way. We're not going to do that either. We're going to use promises. And so whenever the connection is done, we can use a promise like so. And say, connection complete. Once the connection is complete, we can now do query stuff. Now the way this works is we continue to use this client. So we say client.query, and we're going to run two things. We're going to run SQL, and we're going to pass in parameters. You can just put them in right there. I am not going to do that. I'm going to create a variable for the SQL. So if we go back to our Postgres, we can see this is the SQL we need for an insert. So let's copy this. Now, as it is, this is not going to work for us. And the reason why it's not going to work for us is because we don't always want to be inserting this and this right here. We need another way of getting those values in there. We could use string concatenation, but that's terrible. This is terrible because of something called SQL injection, which we're not going to go into. The way to do it is to use parameters. These are specified with $ and then integer numbers. And so this is our first parameter, this is our second parameter. And so what we'll do is define our SQL this way, and then send in parameters, and that's what this is. And so I need to reference that SQL variable, so there it is right there. In terms of parameters, I need a new variable. And so this is an array, and whatever you put here will match up to the parameters here. So the very first thing that I put here would be what goes into $1. And so I'm going to hard code something here. Something called, let's say, blinds are useful. And they are, because it makes rooms darker. And I like to code in a darker room. So that's going to be the first thing. And the next thing is also going to be your Excel. So now let's pass this in here. And this should execute the query. Now we want to continue this promise chain, so we're going to return here. And once again, do another promise. But this time, I want to put in result. And so this will be the result of the query, and I want to console log the result so we can take a look at it. And then when that's done, I'm then going to take this redirect and put that in there. So this will redirect us back to the list. Let's see if this works on first go. I'm a little skeptical, but I'm hopeful. Book add. Let's go check our terminal real quick. Everything looks fine. I'm going to put in something, and I'm ignoring this at the moment because I have those hard-coded values in the code. That seemed to work. I've got my posted values here, but I ignored them. Connection complete. Well, that was that console log I put in there. And then result, command insert row count 1. And so this is useful because we can see here we did an insert command, which is what we did. And that the row count was 1. The row count meaning how many rows I inserted. I did only insert 1. And so that makes sense. Now, on our book list, we aren't selecting anything. We're going to do that next time. How can we verify if we have data in our database? Well, we can go back to our tool here and rerun our select. Blinds are useful. That is what I hard-coded. So blinds are useful. There we go. Excellent. We have taken our hard-coded data and inserted it. Let's switch to using the post body. So based on my terminal here, I can say title and authors. So request.body.title and request.body.authors. Let's try it again. Let's just put some dummy data and see if this shows up. Verify in our database. It did. The data's there. Excellent. Okay, and then we redirect as we saw. I want to show you one thing here, and we're going to deal with this more later, not right now. What happens if we make a mistake? If this is the first time you've done it, there's a good chance you're going to make a mistake. So let's say we did something like misspell the table name. Let's run it and go to book, add, put something in here, and oops, nothing's happening. The reason why nothing is happening is we've actually made a mistake, right? We misnamed the table. And it's continuing on, and it's not connecting, it seems. That seems a little strange. I'm wondering if it's taking a while because I misspelled the table name. This is actually not expected. I actually expect an error here. Let's do this in a more obviously bad way. That's not balanced SQL at all. So let's go back here, restart this. You know what? I think I know why. Here's one of the nice benefits of doing something live. You get to see me screw up. I forgot to put a catch on this. Well, you know, I've got some promises here. I'm making mistakes. What happens when there's an error? You know, I should have put this just a second ago, but I didn't. Whenever there is an error, right now I am just going to redirect to the list once again, but so we can see it. I want to go ahead and console on it. There we go. Let's try this again. So everything's cleared up here. Add, save. Here's our error. Excellent. Error, syntax error, at or near, all that mess. Well, that is expected. Let's go back and return our query to its previously only slightly broken state. Because that's not very realistic of an error. Hopefully you're not going to put something like that in there. So here's this, $1, $2, and error, change it to book. We're back and running. Was there an error? There was an error, and it is relation book does not exist. That's accurate. It's calling it a relation, but we're talking about the table. There is no table called book. It's called books, and so therefore we get an error. If you do have a problem, be sure to look in your console and look at the error message. It can sometimes help you. In this case, I can't find book because book doesn't exist. Now let's do another test. Let's see what our data looks like at the moment. I accidentally did another insert because I had that insert selected. Oops. There's now 2 books of horrible code by Enrique. It's fine. We're going to delete it later. So if I do so I have our select. We have 5 records. Let's go run this again. Book, add. And there it is. And if we look at our terminal, whenever we inserted this time, a row was inserted successfully. Everything's good. We've succeeded. Okay, that's what I wanted to accomplish in this video. What did we do? We installed the PG package. We set up our .environment file for Postgres. I showed you some of the basic tools for Postgres, which is Postgresapp for running the server and pgAdmin for administering the server or just running queries against it. We talked a little bit about how relational databases work, just a little. Talked about selects, we talked about inserts, and then we went to the node side and we created a book form for adding. We added body parser, we connected to the database, we queried, we looked at the results, and we redirected when we were done. That's what we did in this video. Hope you found it useful, and we'll do something else related to Postgres and fun code in the next one.